A small town has always lived a measured life. Small houses, blooming gardens, cozy cafes on the main street. All this created the illusion of peace and prosperity. However, this facade hid many unresolved problems and human tragedies. One such story was the drama that unfolded on a quiet street in a rented house where a young widow named Sarah lived with her 3 children. Sarah lost her husband 2 years ago. Her husband worked at a factory, but due to an accident, his life ended suddenly. All that was left were debts, a small insurance policy, and 3 children who required constant attention. Sarah tried to stay afloat by working several jobs, but money was always in short supply. Her main concern was the rent. She barely collected the required amount each month, and sometimes she didn't even manage to pay on time. Her landlord, Mr. Grayson, was an elderly man who was known for his strictness. He did not tolerate delays in payments and believed that the rules should be followed under any circumstances. In his opinion, if someone could not pay, they had no right to live in his house. Although Sarah tried to explain her difficulties, Mr. Grayson remained relentless. At the beginning of the month, Sarah faced financial difficulties again. Her youngest son fell ill, and much of her money went to medicine and doctor's visits. She was unable to pay the full amount of rent, paying only half of it. This angered Mr. Grayson, and he threatened to evict her, giving her only 10 days to find the money or vacate the house. The first day after the ultimatum was spent in panic. Sarah realized that the situation was critical, but she didn't know where to find the money. She turned to several friends, but they were also struggling to make ends meet. Borrowing money from a bank was impossible due to her low credit rating and lack of stable income. At this time, Sarah's eldest daughter, Emma, who was only 14 years old, tried to help her mother by taking care of her younger brothers. She realized that their family was on the verge of disaster, but she could do nothing to help. Her outlook on life was rapidly changing as she saw her mother sitting at night over the bills, trying to find some way out. On the 3rd day after the ultimatum, Mr. Grayson came to the house to personally remind Sarah of her obligations. He looked around the house sternly, as if assessing how quickly he could find new tenants. Sarah tried to explain to him that she only needed more time, but he categorically stated that he would not wait. The same day, he put up a sign for the house to be rented, which finally emphasized his position. Sarah started looking for other housing options, but they were either too expensive or in terrible condition. Her friend advised her to contact a local charity that could help with temporary housing, but the waiting list was long and there was no quick fix. Meanwhile, rumors of the conflict between the landlord and the widow quickly spread among the neighbors. Some sympathized with Sarah, but most people preferred to stay on the sidelines and not intervene. Only one neighbor, Mrs. Carla, tried to support Sarah by bringing her some food and offering her a temporary job cleaning her house. Sarah agreed, but this did not solve the underlying problem. On the 5th day, the situation became even more tense. Mr. Grayson showed up at the house again, this time with a notary, to officially warn her of the eviction. Sarah tried to remain calm, but her voice trembled as she explained that she was doing everything she could. She couldn't imagine what would happen to her children if they lost their roof over their heads. Her worst nightmare was beginning to come true. At that moment, when it seemed that there was no way out, fate took an unexpected turn. A Hollywood movie was being filmed in the city, and one of the scenes was to be shot not far from Sarah's house. The film crew occupied part of the street, setting up equipment and preparing the location. The locals were thrilled because it was a rare event for their quiet town. Keanu Reeves was one of the actors who took part in the filming. He was known not only for his movie roles, but also for his kindness and humanity. On the day he arrived on set, the conflict between Sarah and the landlord broke out again right in the middle of the street. Reeves witnessed this scene and could not remain indifferent. His attention was drawn to Sarah's tears and the frightened faces of her children looking out of the window. At first, Keanu just watched. He learned from the locals about the situation and decided that he had to do something. His involvement in this story began quietly and unnoticed, but the consequences of his actions would change the lives of this family forever. Every new day was a challenge for Sarah, but it was in those moments when everything seemed hopeless that hope appeared, bringing with it change and a new beginning. When the film crew arrived on the street, It caused a real stir among the locals. People came out into the yard, watched the preparations for filming, and even hoped to see the stars. Among the crowd was Keanu Reeves, who usually tries to avoid unnecessary attention. He was dressed modestly, almost imperceptibly, but he was recognized even in this way. On the day the filming began, a conflict between Sarah and Mr. Grayson broke out on the street again. The locals were used to the fact that disputes between them took place in front of everyone. But this time the situation became particularly tense. Mr. Grayson, backed by an official eviction notice, demanded that Sarah vacate the house immediately. He loudly accused her of being irresponsible, and Sarah, unable to hold back her emotions, stood silently with tears in her eyes. Keanu, who was just leaving the trailer, heard the argument. His attention was drawn to Mr. Grayson's shouts, but especially to the child's crying coming from the window of the house. He stopped, thinking about the situation. At first he just watched, trying to understand what was happening. Gradually, the details of the story began to dawn on him, which had been briefly told to him by one of the crew members who lived in the neighborhood. Keanu was known for his humanity and kindness, and this was one of those situations where he just couldn't pass by. He decided to take action, but to do so in the most delicate way possible, so as not to attract too much attention. First, he approached the locals and started asking them about Sarah, her children, and Mr. Grayson. People were eager to share information because they all had their own opinions about the situation. Meanwhile, Mr. Grayson, noticing that a crowd had gathered, only increased his pressure. His voice grew louder and his gestures more aggressive. Sarah stood there, clutching her hands tightly, trying to find some words, but she was having trouble. The situation became more and more tense until Keanu finally decided to intervene. He calmly approached Mr. Grayson and Sarah, maintaining a friendly and non-confrontational manner. His appearance caused a moment of silence. Even Mr. Grayson stopped when he saw a person he recognized immediately. Sarah looked up in surprise, unable to believe that a world-class star was standing right in front of her. Keanu calmly listened to both sides. He found out that Mr. Grayson had been late with his rent for several months and had the right to demand payment or eviction. At the same time, Sarah explained that the delay was due to her youngest son's illness and financial difficulties that she could not cope with on her own. She also spoke about her attempts to find other housing, which have not yet been successful. Keanu, having heard both sides, decided to offer a solution. He first approached Mr. Grayson, noting that he understood his position as a homeowner, but also drew attention to Sarah's difficult circumstances. His calm but persuasive tone made even a stubborn man like Grayson think twice. To ease the tension, Keanu offered a compromise. He was personally willing to pay Sarah's rent and cover the next 3 months in advance to give her time to find a job and stabilize her situation. Mr. Grayson was skeptical at first, but eventually agreed, realizing that such an arrangement would benefit him. After the lease was finalized, Keanu decided to go further. He contacted his team and asked them to find a new home for Sarah that would be more comfortable and safe for her children. His assistants quickly found several options, and within 2 days, Sarah's family moved into a spacious and cozy apartment, with the rent paid 6 months in advance. Meanwhile, Keanu also helped Sarah find a job. He contacted one of his friends who owned a small coffee shop and arranged for her to get a position as an administrator. This not only gave her a steady income, but also allowed her to spend more time with her children, as the job was close to their new home. Keanu's actions did not go unnoticed. Local residents were impressed by his kindness and willingness to help. The story quickly spread through social media, and within a few days, the whole world knew about it. People wrote words of gratitude, expressed admiration, and even started raising funds to support other families in similar situations. Sarah, who was on the verge of despair a week ago, has now started a new life. She could not believe that all these changes were possible thanks to one person. Her children were happy too, because for the first time in a long time they felt safe. For Keanu, this story was another confirmation that even small actions can change someone's life. He didn't consider himself a hero and continued to live an ordinary life. But for Sarah and her children, he will forever remain the person who gave them hope and helped them start from scratch. After Sarah and her children moved into their new home, her life gradually began to change. The first night in the new apartment was the beginning of a new chapter for the family. The spacious and cozy home was not just a place to live. It became a symbol of stability and security. Sarah could not believe that in just a few days her life had gone from hopelessness to hope. Keanu Reeves' support was not limited to financial aid. He made sure that Sarah got the opportunity to work, and because of that, her self-confidence began to grow. Her new position as a receptionist at a coffee shop turned out to be exactly what she needed. The work was not too difficult, and it allowed Sarah to devote enough time to her children. In addition, the friendly team at the coffee shop supported her, helping her to adapt to the new circumstances. Sarah could not remain indifferent to what had happened. She realized that she had been given a second chance, and began to wonder how she could repay such generosity. In the first month after moving, she decided to join a local charity that helped families like hers. Sarah became a volunteer, sharing her experience and trying to support those in difficult circumstances. Meanwhile, Sarah's story and Keanu Reeves' intervention continued to gain momentum in the media. She became a symbol of humanity and how even one person can influence the fate of others. Social media was flooded with posts urging people to follow Keanu's example. Many started to join charitable initiatives inspired by this story. Keanu, as always, remained modest. He did not comment on the situation publicly, but his actions spoke for themselves. He continued to fulfill his professional duties, working on the set, but found time to visit Sarah and her children in their new home. This visit was a special moment for them. Keanu brought gifts for the children, books, toys, and board games, which helped to create an atmosphere of warmth and comfort in the apartment. Over the next few weeks, Sarah's life stabilized and her children finally began to feel at ease. The eldest daughter, Emma, who had witnessed all the difficulties, now saw her mother changing. Emma began to help more around the house and take care of her younger brothers. Her attitude towards life also changed, as she realized that even in the darkest times there is a chance for light. In addition, the community, which had previously stayed away, began to help each other more actively. The people who saw Keanu intervene realized that sometimes even a little help can change someone's fate. Several new initiatives have emerged in the city to support families in difficult circumstances. The local church organized free lunches for the poor, and the coffee shop where Sarah worked started raising funds for local charitable projects on a monthly basis. One of these initiatives was a program to raise funds to renovate old houses that could become homes for people in need. Sarah also participated in this program, helping to organize and recruit volunteers. She often told her story, emphasizing that even the smallest support can have a huge impact. 6 weeks after her move, Sarah was invited to speak on a local radio station. The host wanted her to talk about how her life had changed after Keanu Reeves' intervention. At first, she was hesitant because she wasn't used to being in the spotlight, but eventually she agreed, realizing that her story could inspire others. Her speech caused a wave of emotion among the listeners, many of whom called the studio to thank her for her words. Over time, Sarah decided to start a blog where she shared her thoughts, feelings, and experiences. She wrote about the importance of staying strong even in the most difficult situations and the importance of supporting each other. Her blog quickly gained popularity, and she began receiving messages from people all over the world sharing their stories and thanking her for her inspiration. Keanu, having learned about Sarah's work, supported her once again. He made an anonymous donation to her blog so that she could create her own website and expand her audience. Sarah was deeply touched by this gesture and decided that she would use this opportunity to help even more people. In a few months, her life changed so much that it was hard to believe how it all started. She became not only a symbol of resilience, but also an inspiration to many. Her children grew up in an environment of love and support, and Sarah felt that her life had taken on a new meaning. This story not only changed the lives of one family, but also showed how kindness and compassion can impact an entire community. What started as a conflict on the street turned into a wave of positive change that lasted long after Keanu Reeves left the city. His act is a reminder that even the smallest gesture of kindness can have countless consequences that change people's lives forever. Sarah's story and Keanu Reeves' intervention in her life went viral on a global scale. Newspaper articles, television reports, and countless social media posts captured the attention of people around the world. The story gained international resonance, turning into an example of how one good deed can change not only the life of one person, but also inspire millions. For Sarah, it was unexpected. She had no idea that her personal drama would cause such a wave of support and sympathy. Messages from strangers came from all over the world. People wrote that her story helped them find the strength to deal with their own difficulties. Many offered her help, support, and shared their own stories. One of the main consequences of this story was the creation of a global charity movement. Inspired by Keanu's example, people began to organize campaigns to help those in need. The hashtag Kindness Revolution was launched on social media and became a symbol of this initiative. Under this hashtag, people shared their good deeds, encouraged others to join the movement, and talked about how their communities had changed. When Keanu learned about the movement, he was humble again. He decided to support the initiative, but he did so in a subtle way. He recorded a short video message urging people to support each other, especially in difficult times. In his message, he emphasized that everyone can make a contribution, even if it is a small help or a kind word. The hashtag Kindness Revolution movement has begun to attract the support of celebrities. Actors, musicians, athletes, and other public figures began using their platforms to draw attention to the importance of kindness and compassion. Charities and organizations also joined the initiative, launching new projects aimed at helping those in need. For Sarah, this movement has become more than just a media event. She decided to use her popularity to help others. She began actively working with international charities, speaking at conferences, and sharing her story as an example of how important it is not to lose hope. One of Sarah's greatest achievements was her participation in the launch of a support program for single mothers. This program, funded by various charitable foundations, provided women with access to free housing, legal assistance, retraining courses, and psychological support. Sarah became the face of the program, and her story inspired hundreds of women to start a new life. At the same time, Sarah's life was changing on a personal level. Her children grew up in an environment that was no longer filled with fear and uncertainty. They received good education, did what they loved, and began to dream about the future. Emma, the eldest daughter, even started writing articles for the school newspaper about the good deeds of people in their town. Sarah also found time for herself. She started painting, which had been a long-time dream of hers, but for which she had always lacked time. Her paintings became a symbol of her transformation. They radiated light and hope. Several of her paintings were sold at a charity auction, and the proceeds were donated to support single mothers. Meanwhile, Keanu continued to follow Sarah's life and the movement she inspired. He contacted her several times to find out how she and the children were doing. His sincerity and unassuming nature remained unchanged. And for Sarah, he became not just a savior, but a true friend. She often mentioned him in her speeches and thanked him for what he had done for her. One day, Keanu was invited to speak at an international conference on kindness and charity. This conference was attended by people from all over the world who were working to make the world a better place. Keanu decided to invite Sarah as one of the keynote speakers. Her speech was the culmination of the event. She told her story, emphasizing that even in the most difficult times, kindness can be the ray of light that saves a person. This conference was the beginning of a new phase of the hashtag Kindness Revolution movement. People inspired by the example of Sarah and Keanu began to create local initiatives in their communities. Mutual aid programs, charitable foundations, and projects aimed at supporting education, medicine, and other important areas appeared. Sarah, Keanu, and all those who joined the movement continued to work to change the world. They knew that it was a long and difficult road, but they believed that every small action counts. Their example became a symbol of hope that they gave to everyone who needed support. Several years have passed since Keanu Reeves intervened in the lives of Sarah and her children, changing their lives. This story has left a deep mark on the hearts of people around the world. The hashtag Kindness Revolution movement continued to grow, and kindness and compassion became key values for many communities. What started as a single act turned into a real global wave of change. Sarah was no longer the tired and frightened woman everyone once knew. She became a confident leader who helped others find hope. Her volunteer work and participation in charitable projects made her known in many parts of the world. She created her own organization called New Beginnings, which specialized in helping single mothers and families in difficulty. Sarah's organization became one of the main partners of the #Kindness Revolution movement. It helped organize educational programs, provided psychological support, and even helped those in need find jobs. With the support of donations and grants, the organization opened several support centers in different countries. These centers became places where people could get help, find community, and start a new chapter in their lives. Emma, Sarah's eldest daughter, became an active participant in the movement. Her teenage experience with family difficulties turned her into a talented writer and activist. She wrote several articles and even a book about how kindness and support can change people's lives. Her work has become popular among young people, inspiring a new generation to join the movement. One of the biggest events associated with the movement was the annual Festival of Kindness, which was held in different cities around the world. At this festival, people from all over the world gathered to share experiences, be inspired by stories, and work together on new initiatives. Sarah became a regular participant in these events, where she shared her experience and told how her life changed thanks to a simple act of one person. Keanu Reeves, despite his work in the movie industry, continued to support the movement. He remained in the shadows, not seeking publicity, but his actions had a huge impact. He anonymously donated large sums of money to support projects related to the #Kindness Revolution and always supported those who asked him for help. One day, Keanu received an invitation from Sarah to speak at a large conference dedicated to the movement's 10th anniversary. At first he was hesitant because he didn't like public speaking, but eventually he agreed. His speech became a symbol of everything the movement stood for. He spoke about the importance of small actions, the power of compassion, and how each person can make the world a better place. His words left a deep mark on the hearts of everyone present. At the conference, Sarah presented Keanu with a special award, a symbol of gratitude from the entire movement. It was a modest statuette in the shape of an open palm, symbolizing help and support. Accepting the award, Keanu said that it was not his merit, but the merit of all the people who joined the movement and continued to do good deeds every day. The story of Sarah, Keanu, and the #Kindness Revolution movement has become part of world culture. It was studied in schools as an example of how kindness can change lives. Artists, writers, and filmmakers have created works inspired by this story. Films, books, and songs dedicated to the movement reminded people that even in the darkest of times, there is a light that each of us can light. At the local level, communities continued to support each other. New aid centers were opened in small towns. Programs were set up to share items and resources, and places were created where people could share their stories and get inspired. All of these initiatives were closely connected to the ideas that Keanu had launched with his act. For Sarah, life became more fulfilling than she could have ever imagined. She continued to work on expanding her organization, attracting new partners and sponsors. Her children grew up. Each of them found their own way, but they were all united in one thing: the desire to help others. Emma became a writer. Her middle brother Danny worked in social innovation, and the youngest, Josh, opened his own small workshop where he taught children from poor families to work with wood. This story reminds us that a legacy of kindness is not just about individual acts, but about how they affect others and inspire them to continue the chain. Keanu Reeves, Sarah, her children, and everyone who joined the #Kindness Revolution movement have become part of something bigger. Their story reminds humanity that we all have the power to do good, and that even the smallest gesture can change the world.